Well, welcome everybody. This is our panel. This is Nobody Fails Better Than Nintendo. We are Stop Skeletons from Fighting. Hello, welcome everybody.
Hey.
Yeah, let's clap away from the microphone. No, don't do that.
Oh, okay. I was trying to give him the sick beat.
Yeah, sick beat. So, in case anyone doesn't know who we are, we're Stop Skeletons from Fighting. We're a YouTube channel. The third member of our team was unable to make it today, but he is at home getting loves and cuddles. So don't worry about that. We'll tell the hot dog gamer you said hi. But so we've been doing YouTube videos together for about 4 or 5 years. Derek's been doing it for much longer.
I've been doing it a little longer, but Stop Skeleton's been around for a bit. And Grace really helped and started joining on right at the end of a Happy Video Game Nerd named Stop Skeletons. So she's being modest. She's been around for a little bit.
Yeah. But anyway, so we are here today to talk to you about failure. Yes.
So what is failure? What is failure? Let's go.
Stepping stone to success. That's
good.
Sega Saturn.
The Sega Saturn.
Yes.
And we'll get a brief mention on the panel here.
The Vita, yeah. It's a good one. What we got in the back? All right. Okay. For sure. What do you got? Yep.
Yeah. Hey.
We've all been there.
Too soon.
What are you gonna say?
Tripping and falling down a set of stairs.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's real bad. Yeah.
It is failure. We were actually going to say, what we were thinking about it, our first thoughts that came to mind were, I don't know, like a Mighty Number 9,
Duke
the
Nukem
launch of that,
Forever.
Duke Nukem Forever. Like these are the kind of failures we're thinking about, but actually, Nintendo is a kind of a weird company to associate with failure because they got the hottest games in the game right now. You know what I'm saying? Like they're not necessarily failing, but
They've been up, they've been down. And certainly others have failed worse.
yes.
So we want to make sure that's clear. This is no one fails better than Nintendo. Other companies have failed harder and worse. Like the Xbox One and the Jaguar and the Sega Saturn. That's someone over here loved it already, so you're onto something.
They found incredible success with things like motion-controlled games, touchscreens, toys of life, but these ideas actually originated way farther back than you might think. They haven't always been successful, but you can't count them out.
Never count Nintendo out. And the thing I like to think about is someone said the Vita, and someone said the Kinect as well. I think you can put on that. When the Vita and the Kinect kind of stopped making money, you kind of get the sense that Sony and Microsoft just kind of put the kibosh on that and just shut it down. Whereas Nintendo, they'll pull back, but then they'll go back to the drawing board with the idea. They keep working at it, and they never give up. And I apologize. We can't quite see our slides from here, so this is going to be.
Derek and I are not very familiar with PowerPoint, and so we should be more familiar. But I made the slides, and then we were supposed to make the notes, and we accidentally put them in a different spot. So bear with us on that.
We're just quirky and improv and
having
a good time. Yeah, we're not unprofessional. We're just giving you that raw experience.
And then this is a quote from Nintendo that I think kind of encapsulates what we're talking about. And this is from Peter Main, a former Nintendo America vice president. I think in any business, the sooner you leave it behind and get on with the next one, the better you are. There are no lingering scars or callousness about it.
Yeah, they take their failures in stride. They don't get callous. They don't get too upset about it, or at least from the consumer perspective.
Yeah.
Can't speak to the internal workings of Nintendo for all this stuff, but. We start with, the Virtual Boy. Yeah, yay!
There are a couple of Virtual Boys on the show floor if you want to mess around with them after this panel, which I recommend.
With this,
they are terrible, yes.
This is probably their most famous failure.
So you gotta start with a banger, with a big one.
Start the show stopping.
So the Virtual Boy actually has a lot of pros, especially for Nintendo. Like it would solidify, like this little innovation, little thing, toy, game, console, is an innovation. Like, wow, we are bringing like a virtual reality 3D experience to the home, like on a scale that no one had really tried before.
And at this point, Nintendo was Nintendo, there was Super Nintendo, there was Game Boy. The Virtual Boy was a bold new product. It really was something different, and I think it did show that, like, hey, we have made gadgets, we have made add-ons for the Nintendo and the Super Nintendo, but this is a whole device.
The future.
Yes, the future was here. So it was kind of a statement when they put this out.
Yep, and it's, you know, like we said, it's VR,
Yep.
finally at home. You could buy this at Walmart?
Yeah, VR existed in the 90s, but like this was, yeah, a box at Walmart was VR. It was here. It was bold.
You know, 3D, it's fun, it's always cool. And in general, it's just a cool idea, and of course...
And it had Dimension of Innsmouth, which is a great game, pictured there.
Yep.
It's Japanese only, but you can get it on emulation, you'll be fine. Because...
Actually, you probably should play it on emulation instead of on the virtual.
Because of the cons.
Yes.
First off, ignore the advertising behind there. We'll talk about that in a second.
I mean, how can you?
Yeah.
But, so the cons of this console, or, you know, whatever, is it was seen as a Game Boy update, but the final design was not portable, which how can you make a successor, you know, to the Game Boy?
It was called the Virtual Boy, and you just released the Game Boy. You have to think about how you release these things and how you market them. It wasn't portable. It had a dumb stand. Yeah, and what else? Oh, there's more to it. Yeah, go for it, Grace.
Oh yeah, so the graphics were a big issue, because, you know, it's still two colors, fundamentally. Like, you know, the Game Gear was out, like, that had, you know, forever, it had full colors. Game Boy, you know, sorely needed an update, and this was not it.
It's how you think about your reputation. Like, I think the Game Boy is probably a better system than the Game Gear, but they're both fine systems.
Yeah.
However,
I can't tell what kind of crowd this is.
Yeah.
Probably a Nintendo crowd, right?
you think about the public, you think about your reputation. There was the Game Gear, there was the Nomad, there was the Lynx, and maybe the Game Boy was a better device, but it was black and white, or monochromatic, you know, 4 shades of gray, whatever you want to look at. And so when they're like, we got the new Game Boy, and I'm sure a lot of public was like, it's still only 2 colors? Nah,
and wait a second, you're saying it's 3D, but it's not, you know, like, this came out at a time when 3D actually meant, you know, the third dimension, like, you know, we can rotate these sprites now, or these polygons, I guess, instead, and this is not it.
For the most part, the games did not look any better than Star Fox, which was on a Super Nintendo, which most people probably already had. It's not looking good for them.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and then...
Of course, and we'll just run through these real quick, because they're kind of self-explanatory, but solo experience, you know, people can't really, you know, enjoy how sick your, you know, Mario Golf is.
No, Grace, you can link together, what, 15 copies of Waterworld?
Oh!
So, never mind.
It is a superior
But
game.
you can't, like, invite your friend over and play, you know, Wario Land. And you're like, oh, tell me what's happening. You know, it's not a shared experience like that.
Did you jump good?
Yeah. Okay. And it hurt your eyes, it gave you a headache. You can only play it for, like, you know, hour, 90 minutes or whatever. And there's, like, no library. There was Dimension of Innsmouth, but, like, not a lot of games. Not a lot of reason to buy this thing.
Also, so back to this advertisement.
I just love the implication that a good dimension? Are there bad dimensions?
Yeah. Why are we going hard on dimensions, Nintendo?
Yeah. We'll see more that 90s game advertising was something else.
Yeah. But anyway, what was the result of this?
Yeah. Yep. And actually, depending on how you slice it, the N64 DD is a worse-selling console, but is that really a console? Is this a handheld device? Nintendo kind of, after all this, wasn't super clear
I think
about...
this is the screen with the butts.
No, that's...
Oh, sorry,
Is it the next? I think you are spoiling the butts.
Alright, I'm just gonna skip to the butts.
No, the butts are a little later.
Okay, never mind.
The butts are a little later.
There will be butts.
There will be butts.
There will be butts.
Yeah. That never actually happened. So like.
You can consider that.
Downstairs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess that's a super failure because it never even got released. Yeah. So I guess for things that were released, yes, okay, fine, technically, asterisk, released game consoles for Nintendo.
We'll be talking about the PlayStation.
I like this crowd is like fact checking in real time. Y'all are just too. Why can't y'all be dumber, man?
The spiritual embodiment of Wikipedia.
Yeah.
But so it's the second worst selling console.
Yep.
And I'm just going to read you guys this quote from Peter Manigan. The good news is, in the launch of fall 1995, it sold more product than the Saturn.
Hey.
Which says something.
Yep.
So it's like while this was, you know, a failure, and this is kind of looked on as like the worst, you know, one of the worst Nintendo, you know, consoles. It's It could have been bad. It could have been
Yeah,
worse.
Sega was still doing worse.
Could have been the Saturn.
Yeah, could have been the Saturn.
And then there's a second part of this quote, I don't think it's on the screen, but Peter also says, or Mr. Main also says, I was sorry that certain key executives at Sega left before I was able to deliver the 50-pound bag of dog food to them. They having described this as the dog of the year. We outsold them, and then we got out.
I love petty shit. When executives who run these giant companies are still like very petty and competitive. I love that stuff.
But what did we learn?
Oh, they're the buzz.
Oh, they're
There's
the
your
buzz.
Okay,
Thank
yes.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
90s advertising.
90s advertising,
Yep.
everybody.
Say no to crack.
Yep.
Your mom hates the Virtual Boy.
So what did we learn? I guess I have this quote from Peter Main. One thing I guess we learned out of it, as Sega did before us, is that working on 2 brand new platforms simultaneously with a finite number of creative and competent game developers is hard, is tough. So you gotta be focused. You gotta be focused.
They were stretched too thin, and that's a lesson that Sega never really recovered from. With the 32X and the Sega CD and the Nomad and then the Saturn, they still were making Genesis and stuff like that. There was too much. That was kind of their undoing. They never recovered from the Saturn, and the Dreamcast just couldn't save them. And Nintendo saw that earlier on with the Virtual Boy and went, okay, we need to focus up.
And I have this other quote from Miyamoto, but it's pretty long, so I'm not actually going to say it. But basically, the crux of it is that this was not marketed correctly. And we showed you some examples of the marketing for it, but the biggest thing is that this was actually intended to be more of just a toy, just a fun add-on, like, hey, y'all like the newest stuff, here's something wacky and cool, but you know, the Game Boy was kind of old in 1995, and so it was due for an update.
Yeah, this was before Pokemon saved the Game Boy. This was that brief period where the Game Boy was kind of done, just kind of over.
Just chugging like you could. And so this, and by calling it Virtual Boy, you're kind of playing on that lineage a little bit, and it wasn't designed for that yet.
One of the hardest things to do is read the room properly when you're doing these gigantic game systems, and we'll see that Nintendo still sometimes has trouble with that.
Yeah. So I want to talk about the legacy of the system. So I didn't know this really, and I think it's easy to forget, but this is actually a follow-up to a little peripheral for the Famicom, which was like a 3D glasses, like goggles situation. That's pretty cool. You can see Mario dodging like the Imperial Starship.
the not Star Wars thing,
Yeah. But so there were lots of attempts after this to do 3D that never actually happened. Like the SP was supposed to have 3D like the 3DS. The GameCube was supposed to have a pop-up LCD like the PS1 had.
And apparently, Luigi's Mansion would have worked with that. Maybe they took that code out, I'm not exactly sure, but Luigi's Mansion would have been like a fun pop-out 3D game, but that entire thing got nixed at some point. And then of course, lots of stuff within the 3DS. We throw in Pokemon Go, even though that's more of a Niantic game, and it's augmented reality, but you can still see there's some, some of the same
so you can see the lineage of the Virtual Boy through, they brought back Stereoscope, they brought back that 3D with the 3DS. We got Pokemon Go, which is, where I think VR, I know VR is a thing now, but I think that for me, VR to break into the mainstream, I think it's going to do that in the AR space versus VR. That's like kind of my personal opinion, but, and then of course, there's Labo.
I think Labo is just the smartest way, because Labo is something for the Switch, and it's a VR thing it's under a specific umbrella. They didn't release Labo VR as a thing that is to compete with the Switch. It's on a different shelf at the store, right? It's a really smart way. I look at it as they looked at the marketing of it, and they knew how to properly sell it. And I don't know that Labo VR is doing gangbusters, but I'm under the impression that it sells pretty well, and it is a little difficult to find. So I can't help but see that lineage there. Nintendo learned a lesson, and not to mention, at the end of the day, it was all worth it. For this to stare at the asshole of the bird. Worth it.
Worth it.
Yeah.
Yes.
And next, 64DD. How many are familiar with 64DD?
That's the people here. Awesome.
That was so smart. Okay, well.
So, we gotta talk about the Virtual Boy, but it is technically the second worst selling console in Nintendo's history. The first being the
Yep.
DD.
Yep.
Which, yes, you
Yes,
could say, if
yeah.
you, well, and it's funny because we were thinking about that, but if we're gonna call Virtual Boy a console, which you can argue about that, I think, we're gonna throw the 64 DD in there.
Yeah.
Just for fun. And then next one.
Worst product.
Worst product.
Yeah.
Yes. Well,
But there were, this was a super ambitious device. It had a proprietary storage with the writable discs. Imagine if Final Fantasy VII had come out on the DD and you could save your game on the disc. That would have been pretty cool. You would have had to buy a memory card. And had the real-time clock, which was still kind of a new-ish thing. Saturn had that as well, but there was going to be games that used the real-time clock. We'll talk about that in a second. It had internet. It had RandNet, a pretty new thing for the time. Had a mouse and a keyboard, but a mouse. That's the thing that's important. Also, just real quick aside, shout out to my boy Matt McMuscles, who donated the N64 mouse to me a couple years ago. It's all his fault, so I just wanted to. That was all him.
thank you. And the only, of course, a bunch of N64 games started on the DD, or they claimed to start on the DD.
Yeah.
But the other thing it did have was a subscription, which,
Yeah, at first you couldn't walk into a store and buy a DVD. You had to like order it off of a magazine or a website, and they sent it to you in the mail. And it was $20 a month, and every 2 months you got a brand new game, which for 1999 was a pretty outrageous idea. Now we have Netflix and all these other Nintendo Switch Online and stuff like that, but kind of a bold new idea at the time. However, this game is that. Majora's Mask, great, yes. This thing did not even come out until 1999, December 99, and the internet didn't even happen until a couple months later in 2000.
which, for context, the Dreamcast came out in the United States in 1999. So it already had internet in Japan, and the PlayStation 2 was right around the corner.
Yeah.
So this is a really bad time to release something for this generation. Also, on top of that, the subscription.
Yeah.
That's not, in 1999, you want to go into a store, a Lawson's, I guess in Japan, and you want to buy the box and you want to take it home, or it's.
Yeah, that's how people shop back then. No one went online to buy stuff, not like they do now. But you want to go to a store, you want to buy your box, and you go home and open your box. You want to find new game stuff, you go to the store and look at the boxes. Having it online was a big mistake. They did eventually sell them in stores, but that was kind of after the damage was done. There's like trying to get rid of their inventory, which didn't really work that well. And there's a quote from Howard Lincoln. He said, "Nintendo of America, we don't want this. That looks like a 32X." Like they're like, the market, they still remember the 32X, we don't even want it. Which, that says about all you need, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, worst selling of all time. 15,000,
salute.
yeah, of 100,000 apparently they made. So they're not that difficult to find, but they are a little expensive online, unfortunately.
Yeah, RandNet was discontinued after only a year
Yep.
of being online, and only 2 third-party games were released for the system. Most of it was Mario Artist, which I love Mario Artist. That was really, one of the main games that was released.
But there was Doshin the Giant and SimCity were the only 2 non-first-party games. But SimCity was HAL, and that's a second-party developer. And then Doshin the Giant eventually came out exclusively on the GameCube in Japan and Europe. Basically, there was all this third-party support, and it just vanished because it just took too long for the damn thing to come out. And other stuff was coming out. People were like, "Hey, this PS2 thing seems like it's gonna go places," and it did.
It did.
Yeah.
All right, so what did we learn?
Well, we haven't learned. All right, put tinfoil hats on. We haven't learned enough. It is 2019. That is a still from Earthbound 64. That prototype has still not leaked online. It's my theory that there is a box in like a billionaire's attic somewhere that's just full of N64 DD prototypes that have not been ripped and pulled online yet. And one of these days someone's going to find that box, put it all online, and we can actually dig a little deeper and see what was being made for this 64 DD, because there's so much support when it was announced in 96, I believe, and then by the time it came out in 99, it was all gone. So there's this weird black hole of like Nintendo history that I think that because they're so close-lipped, they don't talk about this stuff, we can only find out about a lot of information with that stuff with the prototype fleet. That's my theory.
That's your hope?
That's my hope. Yeah, one of these days. You got a question, man?
I just wanted to say, I know people who actually like collect prototypes, and some people who do that purposely don't want to upload their work.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's a problem.
I've heard that. Yeah, they just kind of traded amongst themselves.
Special, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, so in case people can't hear, it was just pointed out that a lot of people who collect prototypes don't like to leak them online because they want to, be the only one who has it, which is,
Yeah.
I hate. I'm not about that.
Nope.
Is there anything more ordinary than just buying things for your personal status, though?
I mean, they could.
It's ordinary, but I think it's selfish. I don't like
It's
it.
the opposite of what they want. It doesn't make them special.
Oh, I see
Yeah.
what you're saying. Like, it would be more special if they actually had it, and other people would want it, yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
But the legacy of this thing is actually pretty impressive. First off, does anybody, wait, oh yeah, which slide is this?
It's cloud.
This is the cloud.
You gotta get it right.
Yeah.
The cartridge was a big mistake for Nintendo, and trying to fix it with this add-on just wasn't a good long-term plan. Like, they were working on the PlayStation thing.
It was a huge course correct to try and match PlayStation because I don't think anybody expected Sony to do that damn well. They ate everyone's lunch when they came out in '95, and they lost stuff like Final Fantasy VII. And if maybe they had made this disc stuff early on, they maybe would have been able to keep Final Fantasy VII. We'll never know. But trying to do it in the middle of the console generation like that just did not work.
Yeah.
They wanted a proprietary. Because Nintendo made a lot of money with cartridges. They wanted their cartridges for their system, so that everybody who made a game had to pay them like $10 a cartridge, right? And so they wanted to make their own disk drive system and their own disk drive unit that they owned. So if anybody wanted to make a DD game, they'd have to pay them up front for that. And I think that development and that greediness
But that happening,
also,
because that was also what the Famicom was like as well.
Yeah.
But the Famicom wasn't happening while the PlayStation was happening,
Yeah.
where it was so much cheaper to just get a CD and.
They could control manufacturing, too.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
You see that proprietary backlash come back to them here as well.
that's just Sony. Sony, yeah, that's a different panel, really.
But
Yeah.
but to bring it back, another thing they learned: mid-system expansions don't work.
No.
Sega's proved it time and time again. We don't need it. But and also after the N64, they didn't go full cartridge again for a while. I guess until the Switch.
I guess until
on
the
a
Switch,
main console, of course, they had it on
Yeah.
the Game Boy and Game Boy.
Well,
DS
yeah, but like
and all
the
that.
the GameCube was discs, and so it was their small little discs, but it was still discs, and then Wii and Wii U were normal DVDs or Blu-ray. I don't. You know what? This is technical shit that I don't know and shouldn't talk about because I might get it wrong. So y'all remember that Vine then, huh?
So yeah, like there's so many games, so many wonderful things, so many wonderful vines that came out that you could trace back to the 64 DD.
Yep.
Like Cabot, the unreleased game Cabbage became Nintendogs. We got WarioWare, got Mii's. Subscriptions would come back. Like they did have a subscription on the Satellaview, so you can't say subscriptions with Nintendo started on the DD, but that was something that kept coming back. But yeah.
Yeah, and I've always been curious about like if you go to Wikipedia or really any kind of website that covers this, there's an enormous list of games that apparently started as 64DD, and there's not a whole way to like confirm that. There's like all the different Zelda things. There's Zelda and the Majora's Mask and Uda Zelda and stuff like that. There's claims that the Mission Impossible N64 game was going to have online multiplayer through the DD. There's not a whole lot of way to really confirm all that stuff. But apparently, so many games were started with the DD, and it's not a whole lot of way. We need those prototypes. We need those leaks so we can know for sure, how much of the N64's kind of development time was focused on the DD. We really don't know.
Yeah. And also, no add-ons.
Yeah.
No more.
At this point, we would see.
Day one patches.
Well, That's a different panel. But yeah, you'd still see like the new 3DS and stuff like that, but you would never see anything like a DD or a 32X ever again. But
We're on the e-reader now.
we're on e-reader now, yeah.
Woo! We like the e-reader. I know we've spent a lot of time talking about the e-reader. So if you watched our videos, we're gonna, we got just briefly go over
And
that.
it's not like even that big of a failure too, but we'll see how it led to so many other things.
This one's a weird one.
Yeah.
But just for people who don't know, the e-reader is a little, I guess, a peripheral for your Game Boy Advance. The way it worked is you would buy some cards, sold separately, and you would swipe them in, and you would use that to modify your game, or you could actually use the built-in or the memory of the Game Boy Advance to actually run entire games, entire NES games on the system. You could also use it for the GameCube. It was amazing. It's,
I love this quote because it just kind of underlines something that Nintendo is a toy company that makes games. You can kind of very broadly say like Microsoft is a software company, Sony is a hardware company, and Nintendo is a toy company. They all make games, but they all come from their video game development kind of from that different jumping off point. And only a company like Nintendo would think of making something like the e-reader. And what are the cons? What are the what's the good bits?
So for the pros for the e-reader, there's a lot. Low, it's just a little bit of plastic, low manufacturing costs. On top of that, we can sell a bunch of cards, baby. Pokemon had just happened, had reinvigorated Nintendo's, I always want to say mobile gaming, but portable gaming space. And
how many people had Pokemon cards with the readers on the side, and did you know what the little barcode was for?
You did?
Okay, you did? Okay.
I had a bunch and I had no idea. I was like, wow.
Yeah.
I thought they were like unknowns or something. Like, oh,
Was this,
so cryptic.
Oh, yeah, this is like the rare version of no.
No. So what was really cool about it is you could add value to an already released game. So basically DLC before you could do DLC. And on top of that, you could even resell old games. And that's what's cool about the e-reader is this is really the first time Nintendo tried to do that on a large scale, because you could buy, packs of 5 cards and you would have
Excite Bike, Balloon Fight. It was the first time Nintendo resold their old games. This is before the GBA Classic line where they sold a bunch of Nintendo games there. Before Virtual Console, this is the first time they're like, let's try selling your old games again. And I think I had the e-reader when it first came out, and it was like a moment of, man, Balloon Fight's still really good. Nintendo games are still really fun. NES and Super, these old games are still fun. It was kind of maybe a new concept that would become so commonplace now.
Yeah. But what are the cons? So we got this, guys, this thing is ridiculous. So to really use an e-reader and use it right, and use it for all that it was, you had to have tons of cards. You had to have like link cables if you wanted to put it in, like if you wanted to modify your version of Mario.
If you wanted to modify Mario, you would need Mario 4. It was Super Mario Advance 4, Super Mario Bros. 3E.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if you
something
wanted
like
to fully experience that game, if you wanted to play the exclusive levels, you would actually need to have a link cable,
and
2 Game Boy Advances, a link cable, the e-reader, all of those cards, and a copy of that game.
It's a portable system.
It's insane. And if you want to use it with your GameCube, of course, you would need to have all the cables and the link cable. It was basically ahead of its time. Now that we have Wi-Fi and Bluetooth things like that, you can download, you can sync just wirelessly. The technology just wasn't quite there. How do you explain to your mom that I need to go to Walmart and I need to buy at least 3 packs of 20 Animal Crossing cards just because I need, I need to have Grace the Giraffe in my game.
Wait, I already bought you. I gotta get you the cards too. I got you the thing, and I got you the other thing. I got you the cards now.
It's a lot.
There aren't enough lawns in the world to mow.
Yes, that is true. So, but also on top of that, this is a very temperamental technology. I don't know how many of you guys have had the experience of swiping in these cards, but you have to. It's almost like using a square card reader right now, like at a coffee shop. You got someone has to lay it down flat.
Oh. Is that an e-reader over there? You have one of those?
Oh, heck yes.
Yeah. Hey.
Very good. You got to hold it flat. You got to swipe multiple times. It's a whole mess. Animal
it's
Crossing
neat.
will get mad at you and like kick you out of your little thing if you don't do it fast enough. It's all hard, and also it's a complicated thing to sell and to talk about because like we're using the reference point of it's like DLC for your thing, but that concept didn't exist at that time in 2000.
Yeah.
But anyway, what was the result? It
It was successful in Japan, but like it came out in America and Australia, and that's it. And was only in those two regions for like about a year. There was a lot more in Japan.
Poor
but, like,
PAL region.
Yeah, PAL got.
Always missing out.
It just really didn't find a huge success worldwide. It was just a hard sell. It was too ahead of its time.
Canada always gets left out.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Canada gets like can't leave our Canada friends out.
I do believe there are a handful of like the most rare e-reader cards are actually PAL exclusive because they slipped into a magazine or something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was a mess.
it was a whole mess.
But man, what did we learn from all this? Like, there is. What did we learn next?
What did we learn?
What did we
I don't
learn?
know. I don't know what we learned. We haven't learned anything.
Go to the next slide. It's just too complicated. There was too many moving parts. Make it simple. People, they want a simple message.
But also, some positive things, people will pay out the nose for extra content for things they already have.
Yeah.
And also, people like buying old things again. And you know what Nintendo likes? They like your money. So, for Legacy, I know we already talked about DLC, but also you gotta talk about Virtual Console, just the idea of selling old games back to people over and over again. It's unfortunate that Virtual Console isn't on Switch yet in any meaningful way. It's a tragedy. I do like that they're integrating a subscription, whatever. We can talk about that forever. That's all we're here to talk about.
Yeah.
Anyway, of course, Amiibos, Toys to Life. Amiibos are really kind of the ultimate take on this card concept, even though Amiibos don't have aren't able to store as much data on them, or I guess you could argue about that. But they have a secondary function. They look good on your shelf. Like,
How many people have Amiibos that you kept in the box? Because, or people or you just bought Amiibos because you wanted to display them, right? And it's like, you can't really say that for Skylanders unless you're really into Skylanders, but
well, even on top of that, you can't say that for these cards.
No,
I don't even know how you display cards like that.
You put them in a book and go, look at my book.
Yeah,
of cards.
Hey, I'm gonna pull out my book. They do have Amiibo cards.
Yes,
that's true.
yes.
And then that also, it brings in that AR
Yes.
situation.
Yeah, you could turn on their camera and you could and then.
You could scan it. So that kind of brings in what we were talking about with the Virtual Boy and this little
Augmented
thing.
reality. Yeah.
All roads lead home.
And we made this panel for originally for an hour. We only have 45 minutes, so we're actually just gonna cut through the this part kind of quickly. But also the Wii U, y'all know the Wii U. The Wii U is about they messed up the messaging so bad. To call this the Wii U was a mistake because the Wii was not that successful, or it was successful. But by the time by the time the Wii U came out, though, the people that really liked the Wii, they wanted the bowling and all that stuff, they were playing, I don't know, Candy Crush. They'd moved on. Smartphones had cannibalized that. And so really, the Wii as a name didn't really mean a whole lot to most people. So that was the first mistake. And then
again, and they also kind of marketed it like an add-on. My mom thought it was an add-on for the Wii. She was like, we already have one. Yeah. That's a good
But
point.
I will say this, I have a Breath of the Wild, but on the Wii U. I played through it pretty recently. I love the pad. The pad's got big chunky buttons and it feels really good. And then I played that for like about a month or so, and then I went back to my Switch and I was like, it's so small. So I kind of got a soft spot for the Wii U, but I don't think it's too controversial to say it was a bit of a hot mess. But really, if you look at the Switch, you think of the lineage of all the stuff we've talked about, you think about the Wii U, kind of the Switch is like this perfect endpoint of almost everything Nintendo has done, both successfully and unsuccessfully, kind of all put together in one like a perfect final device. It's not their final device, but when you look at the lineage of themselves as a toy company that just tries things and never gives up, then you have such a stronger appreciation for what the Switch was finally able to do, because it completely destroyed what the Wii U did, and now it's doing like PlayStation 4 and Wii numbers. It's kind of Nintendo's back up. You can never count them out. And the thing about the Switch I love the most is I don't know what Nintendo is going to do next. Are they, yeah, are they gonna make it smaller? Are they gonna make it bigger? Are they gonna like try and like, I was actually hoping there was gonna be a Switch Pro. It's like this thing runs as good as a PlayStation 4 Pro.
Are they going to double down on mobile?
Yeah.
That's a possibility as well. Like
Not Mario Kart, right?
pretty soon we're going to be at a time where we might not, we might not need consoles anymore. Like maybe everything will be streamed to whatever device you prefer. So it's really which I know I'm terrified of.
Yeah.
And it's not going to happen in the next generation. I think next generation is going to be a stepping stone to that. But we'll see. We'll see. Stadia comes out in November, guys.
Yeah.
Let's hold on to your butts. It's coming.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. But
The fighting games will fight for me. I can't wait. And actually, that's gonna wrap it up here. But we do have some time for questions, right? We got a few minutes for questions, and then we're gonna be doing the autographs next door right after this. So, any questions? Man, that was fun. But it was a small little thing that, was not that was a proper way to do a new device. It was small, it was quick, and it wasn't meant to be the replacement because it was like a stopgap between like that and the DS. It's sort of like the little mini Wii that only came out in Canada. It's not meant to be like, the new Wii's here. It's like, no, here's a quick little thing, and we got the new stuff coming since. That's a proper way to do it. Yeah, you with the Garfield.
I think I remember hearing that the DD only exists because Nintendo wanted to convince developers to not leave.
It was Sony was destroying them. The PlayStation was, like, from day one, killing it. And, I think that was their attempt to do it. It just did not work out for them. And, yes, Jim,
Since we're talking about failures of Nintendo, they will feel all the things but Nintendo is very fixing the worst.
There's so many.
The question was about the third-party
all the peripherals
for Nintendo.
Yeah.
They're actually there's a lot. Man, there's a lot there.
That's a great question. Can't answer that here. It's just too much. I'm so sorry. Let's get this out of the room. Yeah, you.
So why do you think that the Nintendo 3DS didn't have the same kind of branding problem the Wii U did? Just a different target market, or what?
Can you say that again? I didn't get the middle of that question.
Why would you think the 3DS doesn't have the same branding problem that Wii U did, where it's like, oh, this is just, another DS that plays the same games. I don't need to get this one. Why did that have that problem when the Wii U had the problem where people thought it was just...
I think it was enough, sorry, I just like yelling.
No.
I think it was enough of a change. I think the real problem was with the new 3DS and with even the 2DS. Like that is where actually the confusion came in, because 3DS, I think it was enough of a change in the name, and I never personally used the 3D on the 3DS.
Yeah.
I just couldn't.
I think everyone turned it
terrible.
on for a few minutes and went, my eyes hurt, and turned it off.
Yeah. So I think it was enough of a jump, but after that, the kind of mid-generation refreshes they did, or if they are claiming those are totally new consoles, like that's where I think the actual mess up was.
Yeah.
In the back in the red, hat.
So, was there any consideration to talking about the Satellaview?
Oh, the Satellaview. We kind of mentioned it. We wove it into the Satellaview was maybe like, Grace, you did a video on that, so you probably know a little more about it than I do. So you want to handle this one?
Well, we thought about talking about the Satellaview, but we wanted to focus more on the 64DD because it's something we've been thinking about, because we do have a video that's coming up in like a month or so about it. So we were just like really gung-ho on the DD.
Yeah.
That's the real answer. And you with the beard.
Appreciate you guys' work. Thank you for coming out.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for coming out.
Yeah.
So you probably have mentioned this in your videos, but I've seen so many I can't remember. Where did you get the name Stop Selfie?
Ooh. Well, does anybody want to answer the question?
Oh my gosh, there.
I like the t-shirt over here. Yeah.
The game genie code for Castle of Dragon.
Oh, hell yeah.
There's an NES game called Castle of Dragon, which I had never heard of, and you're not missing anything. But there is a game genie code and it is verbatim, stop skeletons from fighting. And it just makes these skeleton enemies just not swing their swords and just jump around and not fight you. And I just thought that sounded really fucking cool, and here we are, yeah.
There we are. All right, question in the back behind the projector.
You guys have done a bunch of videos about it, but quick thoughts on the GBA link cable, the failure of that?
It's anytime you make the link cables are weird in terms of peripherals because it's one of those things where you have to have so much more equipment to actually make it worthwhile. I think overall the link cables are pretty cool and they function the way they should. What's really interesting is I don't think it was that much of a failure because it was a cool stopgap before we could get online multiplayer. I think it was a good solution for, hey, I want to play, baseball 2000 with all of my friends, all 16 of my friends, which you can do.
I guess like the like 4-player adapter though, I don't know if you could call that really a failure because it was only packaged in with F1 Racer, I think, for a really long time. But I don't know if there really were a whole lot of games that supported it. But there are some things that Nintendo like really pushed, and it just didn't work out well for them. And there are other things they just kind of put out there for a little bit, and then it did as well as it did, and they moved on. And so when they really they kind of bet the farm on something, those are the ones that are the more interesting failures to us.
And that was actually all the time we have.
Yeah.
We need to get out of here for the people coming in next time for the next one. So we're gonna be. Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Can we take? Yeah. But all right, we will be over next door. So come see us. Come say hi.